양지 Khenpo Sodargye 미장 오늘 모놈 심보링아 비었다. 그러다는 건 잔도 실무고 돈바 특제 장나 기쇼 엄살. 전주고 제링이 정금서 자고 뒤집신을 연락. 이제 반조자라 소라. 공지 도반 보러 신지로.
All right, now let's begin our teaching. Before we formally start, please generate the unsurpassed and supreme bodhicitta. We will continue our study on the Bodhicharyavatara. Today we are discussing the section on abandoning afflictions by contemplating their faults. Previously, we studied the harm caused by afflictions. We learned that afflictions have harmed us for a long time throughout the cycle of birth and death, and the degree of harm they cause is extremely serious. So, for every practitioner, we should not rely on or become close to afflictions. As we explained earlier, there's no enemy, bad person, or evildoer in the world who can compare to the enemy of our own afflictions. I will explain the main point of today's teaching in a summarized way, which is we must always keep in mind that affliction should never be our refuge. We should never become close to afflictions. If thus my long and constant enemies, the only cause of the proliferation of manifold harms, remain within my heart, can I be safe and happy in samsara? This verse says that afflictions have been harming us since beginningless time. So the root of all harm is afflictions. If such afflictions remain in my heart for a long time, how could I possibly have happiness in the cycle of birth and death? There is simply no chance for happiness. This is the main point of this verse. Why is this so? As we have explained earlier, afflictions have continuously harmed us throughout the boundless cycle of samsara and caused us endless suffering. From the perspective of time, the time duration is not a day or two. Here, from the term long and constant, we know that this duration stretches from beginningless time up to now, which is an unimaginably long period. If we still haven't properly counteracted afflictions, then afflictions will continue to harm us in the future for countless kalpas. Afflictions have no other purpose except to harm us. Afflictions threaten, torment, and attack all sentient beings in the three realms without exception. So we must deeply recognize that the harm caused by afflictions is not just over a day or two, a year or two, or even a single lifetime. Afflictions have harmed us over an extremely long period of time. Moreover, the way afflictions harm us is unlike any other kind of harm. The harm caused by afflictions is the greatest of all. The Buddha said this in the sutras, that worldly enemies are not our greatest adversaries. It is afflictions that are our greatest enemy, the main culprit and the most terrifying foe. So, how do afflictions harm us? As we all know, once these afflictions arise, desire, anger, and ignorance, we continually create negative karma in samsara. As a result, sentient beings have no choice but to experience the suffering of the three realms, especially the unbearable suffering of the three lower realms. The hells, hungry ghosts, and animals. Even as humans, we still suffer from the elements, earth, water, fire, wind, as well as illness and other pains. The roots of all sufferings and all the hardships in samsara is our afflictions. So, in the three realms of samsara, the root of all suffering, all harm, and all evil is nothing other than afflictions. So, whether from the perspective of time or from the perspective of the severity of harm, we must clearly recognize that afflictions are not something we should ever become close to. Some worldly people treat afflictions as if afflictions were their closest friends. They live their lives constantly under persecution and disturbance of afflictions. But such people don't realize they are living in the land of the Rakshasis, and that one day the Rakshasis will devour them. They cannot see their tragic ending. But those with wisdom and ability must recognize the harm of afflictions. Afflictions are like a bad guest who stays in our mind, treating it as their guest room. This bad guest never leaves. If afflictions never leave, then how could we ever have a chance for happiness in this world or in the cycle of birth and death? It's impossible. Why are all the sentient beings in the three realms so miserable? For some people, especially those in big cities with wealth and status, on the surface they may ride in luxury cars, live in five-star hotels or villas, and enjoy all kinds of seemingly wonderful lives. But until the disease of afflictions in their mind stream is cured, they will never experience true happiness. It's like someone with a serious illness. Even if they sleep in a luxurious bed, their heart is always troubled. In the same way, no matter what kind of person on the surface, they may look well dressed and eat fine food. In every way, it seems their life is almost heavenly, one might think. This person's life is really no different from a celestial being. But when people really get to know them and understand their lives, one will find their heart is empty and helpless. Moreover, their desires keep growing. Their mind is constantly preoccupied with many concerns, such as emotions, work, business, and so on. So until the disease of afflictions in our mind streams is eliminated, we are like patients in the cycle of samsara who will never have a chance for true happiness. Here, the verse says that as sentient beings in the cycle of birth and death, how could we ever be free from fear? How could we ever find happiness that is free from all fear and suffering? It is very obvious that once we are tormented by afflictions, no matter how much we wish for a happy life, our mind is never truly free. Not even for an instant do we find freedom or peace. So, to truly experience happiness is extremely rare. But if the afflictions in our mind streams are counteracted through the antidotes taught in the Dharma, such as selflessness or other methods, then gradually our afflictions will decrease. Through this way, practitioners and yogis will live a truly happy life. I often think about this. On the surface, wealthy people and business leaders in big cities may enjoy a certain standard of living. But if we compare their inner happiness to that of mountain hermits, practitioners living in the mountains, in caves, among rocks, or in the forest, may seem outwardly simple with plain food and clothing. But from the perspective of inner happiness and the time living in happiness, practitioners far surpass the wealthy and privileged people of the world. So training the mind is extremely important. If we fight against the afflictions in our mind streams, one day the afflictions will have no position in our minds. At that time, even if we encounter great difficulties or illness, all these difficulties and all adversities will actually transform into favorable conditions for enlightenment. So if we practice according to the teachings of the great masters of the past, we can all attain this kind of happiness. Of course, for most people, this is best achieved by abiding and practicing in a quiet place. If we go to a very complicated environment, it's not that there are no achievements, but the power of our practice is relatively weak. Many practitioners here find that their practice is more effective in quiet places, such as the academy or monasteries, and the results are much better. But if they go to the city or back home, the strength of their practice seems to weaken. What's more, they lack the endurance to withstand many pressures from the complicated environment. So I sincerely hope that in your practice, it's important to first choose an environment that is suitable for your own practice. I think some practitioners here are truly remarkable. They are not attached to their family, relatives, status, or wealth. Many have left behind all worldly fame and material gain and follow in the footsteps of the great masters of the past, seeking out quiet places to practice hearing, contemplation, and meditation with unwavering steadiness, like Mount Meru, day and night. If they keep up this spirit, I believe that one day they will realize the luminosity of the true nature of mind. There is no doubt about this. So I hope everyone will first choose a truly excellent environment. This is also crucial for practitioners. As long as afflictions remain in our minds, no matter if it's a lay person or a monastic, there will be no happiness for us in this world. It's not just that we won't be happy or suffer a little. The real problem is that this suffering is endless. It will never be exhausted, even through countless lifetimes. Therefore, we must do everything we can to stop the terrible and hateful afflictions in our mind streams. As we mentioned earlier, when it comes to counteracting afflictions, we should not practice patience, thinking, my patience is very good, these afflictions are pitiful. It doesn't matter if they arise more often in my mind stream. They are mischievous, but it doesn't matter. In this way, sometimes we have anger, sometimes greed. Speaking of the desire and anger, they are the most fundamental and terrifying among all afflictions. When teaching the Bodhicaryavattara, His Holiness said that for some lay practitioners, the easiest to understand about afflictions are desire and anger. The mind of ignorance or delusion may not be so easily understood by some new practitioners, because ignorance and delusion are rather abstract concepts in terms of Buddhist terminology. But in any case, I think everyone here understands that whenever all these afflictions, desire, anger, pride, jealousy, and so on, arise in our minds, try our best to restrain them. Try to shorten the duration whenever they arise. And when they do arise, recognize them and apply antidotes. Once we recognize them, it's like having a house full of gold and silver treasures, and a thief comes in, we know we should stop them. If we don't stop the thieves, once they get in, they will steal many of our treasures. In the same way, our long accumulated treasures, such as pure precepts, the merit of hearing, contemplation and meditation, and all the treasures of virtue and aspiration, should not be stolen away by the thief of afflictions. Otherwise, it would be a real pity. So we must never rely on afflictions in our daily life. The next verse would explain the reason, because if we rely on afflictions for a long time, the harm they bring us is far from that of ordinary foes. The harm caused by worldly enemies is very brief and not especially severe. If the keepers of the prison of samsara, such as the murderous butchers in the hells, live in the webs of greed within my mind, how can there be any happiness for me? Here, samsara is the cycle of birth and death. So, the keepers of the prison of samsara refers to affliction. These afflictions become the keepers who watch over and control us in the prison of samsara. And these afflictions also become the murderous butchers in the hells, the ones who torment and harm us. If such afflictions reside in our hearts, then in the cycle of birth and death, in the three realms, how could I possibly have happiness? It's absolutely impossible. So, following the previous points, how do we analyze it? First, we should know that in the world, those who commit crimes are often locked up in very dark or extremely painful prisons. When in prison, they don't have a moment of freedom, and there are many guards constantly watching over them. If the prisoner's behavior is even slightly out of line, they will certainly be punished in various ways, and they never have any freedom. In the same way, whether it's a human or a god, all sentient beings are imprisoned in the three realms of samsara, and in this prison of samsara, we are tightly bound by the chains of karma and afflictions. There is not the slightest chance for freedom or ease. Afflictions keep us locked up forever. As Patrul Rinpoche said, it's like a bee trapped in a jar. We are trapped in the prison of samsara, unable to escape. Many of us long in our hearts to go outside, to the pure land or another pure realm, and enjoy the bliss of liberation. But these jailers of afflictions won't let us out. When we try to hear, reflect, and meditate in order to leave samsara, they prevent us from practicing by making us sick, making us give rise to afflictions, anger, resentment, and the like. Also, in our world today, many causes and conditions lead us to create negative karma. Sometimes, if we look at those big cities, we find all kinds of doors and entrances, but very few are doors to liberation. In a big city, there are countless doors and entrances. If we are looking for a door that leads to liberation, it might be tucked away in a small monastery, a few or even dozens of kilometers away. But in the vast sea of people, such paths are rare. How many monasteries are there? And even among them, some focused on tourism or exhibitions. And there are not many people truly practicing in accordance with the Dharma. So, whether in big cities or other environments, it's clear to see there are almost no open doors to liberation in the outside world. From this analytical method, we can understand that afflictions are truly the real jail. These jailers of afflictions keep us locked up, not only making us suffer in samsara, but also delivering us to the most terrifying hells in samsara. They hand us over to the murderous butchers in the hells. Why do we say this? Because all the appearances in hell are the manifestation of our own karma and deluded mind. In fact, all the hell dogs, crows, and the various animal-like hell guards are all manifestations of the afflictions of our impure minds. we know that the very shapes of our own afflictions take the forms of the hell beings. Sentient beings with heavy afflictions naturally fall into hell, and then our own afflictions become the various forms of hell gods. They wield terrifying weapons and constantly torture us with various punishments, cutting, killing, and tormenting us in all kinds of ways. We can understand all kinds of scenes in the hell realms from the scriptures. For example, in the hot hells, we are thrown into boiling molten iron, completely burned and scorched. In the cold hells, we experience unbearable, intense cold. Many hell gods even stand guard with weapons and won't let us out of hell. All these phenomena and all these sufferings are all manifestations of our own mind. These jailers of afflictions have long resided in our hearts and are inseparable from our habitual tendencies, constantly guarding and imprisoning us. If we do not recognize their harm, and if we do not realize how terrifying they are, then, as mentioned before, we will always go along with afflictions, and we won't even realize that this is our greatest enemy. In this way, whether in samsara or anywhere else, we will never find lasting happiness. As the sutras say, we know that the three realms are like a burning house, devoid of true happiness. Moreover, as Bodhisattva Maitreya and Guru Padmasambhava have said, in the impure chamber of the three realms of samsara, there isn't any wonderful fragrance. In other words, there is no happiness in the five realms, just as there is no sweet fragrance in a latrine. Therefore, we should understand that as long as afflictions accompany us, there will never be any opportunity for freedom, happiness, or well-being in our lives. Therefore, first, we must have a very clear understanding of the true nature of afflictions. We must know that afflictions have been harming us since beginningless time. But now countless sentient beings in the world have no idea how terrifying afflictions really are. Whether lay or monastic, many people probably don't even know what afflictions are. Even if some people know that they are troubled by harmful afflictions, they think it's just an occasional obstacle. In fact, they don't take it seriously or recognize its harmfulness. Therefore, as practitioners, I think all of us should rely on the profound teachings of our lineage masters to observe the true nature of our afflictions. Sometimes we can contemplate emptiness or selflessness, to examine afflictions until they dissolve into the Dharma dhatu. Sometimes we can use various Vajrayana views to observe our afflictions. For example, when afflictions arise like a raging fire, observe their true nature. This is extremely important because afflictions are in fact illusory in nature. In Finding Rest in Meditation, there are quotations from the prophecy for Bhadra the illusionist saying, actually, we sentient beings are also an illusion created by karma. And what is the antidote to the illusion of karma? It is the illusion of the Dharma that subdues it. Finally, the illusion of wisdom manifests. The illusion of wisdom refers to the fruition of Buddhahood. So, if we observe the nature of afflictions with care, using the pith instructions of like a dream, like an illusion, as taught in the Mahaprajna Paramita Sutra, we can counteract afflictions. Or we can use different methods of the Abhidharma Kosha to counteract afflictions. This is also possible. In short, we must first recognize the harm of afflictions. Once we know their harm, it's like when we know someone is truly bad and terrifying like a terrorist, we wouldn't get close to them, because if we do one day, they will destroy us. But our afflictions are completely different from worldly enemies. How are they different? When worldly enemies harm us, as mentioned before, they can occasionally harm us, but not for long. But until we recognize affliction's true nature, they will harm us forever. Therefore, we must practice diligently. Otherwise, for every ordinary person, afflictions will always be with us. And as long as they are always with us, there will be no happiness. As Patrul Rinpoche taught, and later Khenpo Chodrak also quoted a very fitting analogy to illustrate the point. Afflictions are like extremely fierce jackals, and we ordinary beings are like a flock of sheep. If there are wolves among the sheep will never be happy. In the same way, for us ordinary beings, if we have afflictions, there will never be even a little happiness. This is self-evident. We often say, I'm very happy today. But in fact, even this happiness is either the all-pervasive suffering of conditioning or the suffering suffering of change. True happiness, I think, is not possible until we ordinary beings have attained realization. Therefore, everyone must recognize that the root of our unhappiness now is the afflictions in our own mind stream. So these afflictions should be counteracted in every possible way. If we use the pith instructions of the Guru, afflictions are not so terrifying and they can be overcome. Everyone should have confidence in this. So the reason why we cannot rely on afflictions has already been explained. Now, in order to abandon afflictions, we must give rise to a strong motivation. This will be explained in 3 parts. First, we must put on the armor of diligence to overcome afflictions. Second, we must not become discouraged by suffering. Finally, we must persistently fight against afflictions without giving up. Next, we are going to explain in detail. Therefore, until I see that I have truly slain this enemy, I will not slacken in my efforts. This verse tells us that since we already know the faults and harm afflictions bring to us, we should analyze them in detail. Through this analysis, we should make a vow to counteract afflictions. For example, when we see a truly terrifying enemy, some of us may think in our hearts, this enemy has harmed me so many times, I must find a way to eliminate this enemy. We have this kind of determination. In the same way, we should rely on the teachings of our Guru, the pith instructions of the treatises, and the analysis of our own wisdom. Ultimately, we will recognize that afflictions have brought us endless trouble and suffering throughout our journey in samsara. If I keep following this path, it will not benefit my future. Therefore, from now on, I must start anew. Anyone with wisdom will always consider their future and make such a resolution. Then, how should we counteract afflictions? We should think, therefore, until I see that I have truly slain this enemy, until I have eradicated the afflictions in my mind stream, until I have cut off the root of desire, anger, and ignorance, I must never give up my diligence in this life or in all my future lives. From the depths of our hearts, we should have a very firm resolve. What kind of resolve? I must make an effort. If I don't make an effort, such a great enemy as afflictions is not easy to destroy. So we should contemplate, by what means can I eradicate, uproot, or eliminate the afflictions in my mind stream? Of course, if we try to use weapons or tools to destroy afflictions, it's impossible. It is not realistic if we fight afflictions using tools like a stone or a stick and say, today I'm going to fight with afflictions. Everyone come help me. Let's all charge at the afflictions together. Maybe that's not very realistic. The only way is that we must contemplate emptiness and attain the wisdom of selflessness. The wisdom of selflessness is the most fundamental way to uproot afflictions. Therefore, we must rely on the treatises of the Mahayana, which means relying on the supreme and convincing wisdom. Once we can give rise to wisdom in our minds that leads to liberation, gradually the seeds of afflictions in our mind streams will be destroyed. This is the teaching of our lineage masters. Of course, I think this process is a lifetime of effort, a continuous and diligent effort. If we don't make the effort, we cannot even accomplish ordinary worldly endeavors. Therefore, whether in front of the Guru or after taking refuge in the Buddha, every practitioner should think in their heart, I have wandered in boundless samsara from beginningless time until now. If I don't put on the armor of diligence now, if I continue to be lazy and careless, I will never be able to leave samsara. Afflictions are like poisonous snakes, making me careless, distracted, and lazy every day, making me sleep in every day. Afflictions are delighted by our acting improperly. It's like giving milk to a poisonous snake. In the same way, if we keep feeding the poisonous snake of afflictions with the milk of carelessness, then for afflictions, it's as if we are giving them a green light, letting them succeed in everything. That's why it's so difficult for people to practice nowadays. It's like climbing a high mountain, but when it comes to creating negative karma, everything goes easily, smoothly, and naturally. For example, if I want to build a monastery, the process is full of difficulties. But if I want to build a meat processing factory or a slaughterhouse, the permits are quickly approved and the funding comes right away. I will quickly become the owner without a problem. Sometimes we can see that creating negative karma is like going downhill. In no time, thousands of demonic forces come to help. So the momentum for such negative activities is strong, but accomplishing other virtuous deeds is not like this. The reason is that in this world, there are just too many convenient ways for creating negative karma. But the time and opportunity to properly practice virtue, such as contemplating impermanence even briefly, are rare and difficult to find. Also, it's hard to find such a space. This is the hidden meaning of samsara is suffering. So whether it's a monastic or a layperson, after hearing this teaching, everyone should have some insight, and it should not be something that disappears in a day or two. This should lead us to change ourselves away from the direction of our endless circle of life and death. Originally, we were heading toward hell, but now, having encountered the Dharma, we must change our direction away from hell. If we cannot attain realization in this very life, at least we should turn the steering wheel right away and not head in the wrong direction. This is the aim and purpose of obtaining a human body and encountering Mahayana Dharma. If we don't do this and keep creating negative karma, the same as before we heard the Dharma without a little change, then listening to the Dharma only brings a little merit. So can everyone make aspirations in their hearts? On the other hand, when studying the Bodhicharyavatara, we should carefully explore every sentence and every word. As I mentioned before, there is truly profound meaning here. Some Dharma friends here finish reading for exams very quickly. I don't think there's any need to read it so quickly. I have already received this transmission many times. I can receive your transmission again to have more blessings. On one hand, the blessings of Mahayana Dharma are great. Maybe you have transmissions from different lineages and you can share it with me. On the other hand, what I really want from the recitation and interpretation exam is that you share your personal understanding after you truly reflect and think deeply for every word and every line. In our hearing and contemplation, can each of us achieve this goal? Although we don't cover much each day, just 4 or 5 verses, some people may feel the Bodhicharyavatara is very easy. I can just read through it quickly. Yes, it might not even take a minute for one to read through these 4 verses. They seem quite simple. But to truly contemplate and study the meaning is not easy, since these are the Vajra words of the noble ones, and they are extremely profound in content. Generally speaking, we ordinary people cannot immediately reveal this text's profound treasures. Therefore, in our studies, we don't study in a superficial way. I know some of you are very intelligent. You can certainly understand the literal meaning of the Bodhicharyavatara, but is your understanding of the words the same as the real meaning, or is there a difference? Even now, my understanding is not very broad. If we really rely on the commentaries of the great masters from the Tibetan regions, Han regions, and India to analyze the text explanations, then even teaching 1 verse of the Bodhicharyavatara a day would be still not enough to cover its profound meaning. But if we drag it out too long, it would take a very long time to finish 1 text, and that's not ideal either. So in this time of studying the Bodhicharyavatara, whether it's a layperson or a monastic, do not think the verse is simple and go through it quickly. These verses may appear simple, but if we don't reflect deeply, we won't uncover the true meaning within. If we don't uncover the meaning, we may not gain true understanding or benefit. So after hearing the Dharma, not only should we counteract the afflictions in our own mind stream, but try to gain some new insights, new understanding from every word and every sentence we study. If we just read the words, then there's not much difference between studying and not studying, although I don't teach very well. But we have many reference books, including the extensive commentary on the Bodhicharyavatara. This commentary explains the text on the explanations of the great masters of the past, and also includes some of the pith instructions of His Holiness. If we dig deeper, there is plenty of content to learn. So when we study, don't treat it too simply. I feel that I have already said a lot here. Maybe I am right about something, maybe not. Anyway, I have stayed focused on the main topic and haven't gone off topic or said anything irrelevant or anything meaningless. When everyone interprets these verses, try to stay focused on the content and then continue to reflect and analyze. This is truly necessary. The next verse is as follows: those who are filled with pride, once angered, cannot sleep until those who have caused a slight offense are killed. Here, this verse uses a metaphor to illustrate the point just discussed. Why must we be diligent? Even for some minor grudges that are not very significant, people insist on taking revenge, on settling the score. but the harm caused by afflictions is so much more serious as explained above. Why not take revenge on them? We must not practice patience here or use other excuses to give up our diligence. For example, when others cause some minor or insignificant troubles, such as slandering, creating obstacles, or taking away property, many people simply cannot accept these small offenses. They think, this person spoke badly about me at such and such a time, or this person harmed me in this or that way. So now I must take revenge, saying, if I don't take revenge, I'm not a real person. Especially for those with strong anger, if someone kills their loved ones, they can't even sleep at night until they get revenge. Many people say things like, if they haven't taken revenge, their mind is not at ease. But in reality, these so-called hateful enemies have caused less harm to us. Why is that? The sutras also say that friends and enemies are not fixed. As it says in the letter to a friend, in the cycle of samsara, we all become each other's father, mother, son, or grandson. Today's enemy may be tomorrow's friend, and so on. As in the stories of Venerable Katyayana, someone who is your enemy in this life may become your loved one in the next. This thing happens very often in samsara. His Holiness also said in a Song of Realization, the enemy you hated in the first half of your life may become your close friend now. And those who care for you deeply now may, after some time, become your enemy who harms you. So worldly friends and enemies are not reliable or trustworthy. Therefore, we should not give rise to desire or anger. That's roughly the meaning of these teachings. This is truly how it is in the world. Generally speaking, whether it's between countries or individuals, no one remains an enemy forever. This is something we can see from our own life experience. So when it comes to worldly enemies, people think, he harmed me, I must do something to him. In fact, that's unnecessary. But if we have the courage and the heart for revenge, we should take revenge on the afflictions that have harmed us continuously from beginningless time until now. Afflictions are the root, creator, and maker of all harm in the world. So if we truly have a mind for revenge, or if we are a true upright practitioner, a real hero, then we should take revenge on our true irreconcilable enemy, afflictions. We should work to overcome and subdue them. If we don't, we could be considered the weakest, most cowardly, and most spineless person in the world. We can put it this way. Because normally, if someone's friends or relatives are killed by others and they don't take revenge, people will mock them, thinking they lack the spirit of a true man. In the same way, whether in terms of time or scope, afflictions have constantly harmed us from beginningless time. Yet we still get close to our afflictions, even treat them warmly. Whenever afflictions arise in our mind streams, not only do we not counteract them, but we go along with them. Today I'm angry, yes, and then follow that anger to scold others. Or when desire arises, not only do we not counteract it, but we follow it and create negative karma. Is this kind of behavior in accordance with the Dharma? Each of us can reflect on this for ourselves. So, as practitioners, it is extremely important to counteract afflictions. Of course, the Kadampa teachings say that counteracting afflictions is not so easy, because from beginningless time until now, afflictions have been intertwined with our minds. So a day or two of practice may not be enough to counteract afflictions. It's like the old analogy of leprosy. If someone's hands, feet, and body are all basically rotten, can taking 1 or 2 doses of medicine cure such a serious illness? Absolutely not. In the same way, the disease of afflictions has harmed us from beginningless time until now. So now some people wonder why practice for a couple of days has no effect, or why anger still arises in the mind after practice, or think, I've already done the 5 preliminary practices for 35 days. How can I still have afflictions? How strange. Many people, especially those new to Buddhism, think that counteracting afflictions should bring results very quickly. But this is wishful thinking. It's probably not that simple. Whatever we do, even building a house, we have to lay the foundation, complete the construction, and do interior decoration. Maybe we planned for 1 month to complete, but it drags on for 3 or 4 months and still isn't finished. This happens all the time. The root of afflictions is deeply entrenched for every ordinary being. Therefore, when you have no effect after a short period of practice, don't feel discouraged. Don't think, it seems I have no hope now. I've practiced for so many days, but it seems that true selflessness and emptiness have not arisen in my mind stream. I still haven't seen Guru Padmasambhava or Manjushri. How could this be? Is it that the blessings of Buddha Shakyamuni and all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas don't exist? Why do I have to wait so long? Some people have very simplistic ideas. I think this is because they didn't really understand the Dharma. As practitioners, we must learn from the great masters of the past. The great masters started studying the Dharma and counteracting afflictions from a young age, but even at the time they left this world, some were 70, 80 or 90 years old, they were still diligently practicing. So the deportment and practice of these great masters is truly worthy of our admiration. They never complained at all. For example, for someone who started practicing at age 10 and is now over 90, they never wondered why afflictions still arose in their minds. They never blame anyone. This is the true attitude of a genuine practitioner. But some of us, perhaps our understanding of Buddhism is a bit lacking. So we must first listen to the Dharma. Listening is very important. If we don't understand these principles, we may often develop wrong views. We could have become a good practitioner, but instead all sorts of negative thoughts arise in our mind streams and we end up giving up halfway. This is truly a pity. Therefore, each of us should really listen and contemplate Dharma and establish a solid foundation. Once we have a solid foundation, recognizing the true nature of mind should not be too difficult. So here, the verse says that like heroes of the world, until we have truly vanquished the great enemy of afflictions, we practitioners should be sleepless and work tirelessly, day and night. This diligence should never be abandoned because in Buddhism, everything depends on diligence. In fact, diligence is the strength that comes from our own minds. Everyone needs to strengthen their mind. For example, when studying or memorizing something, if you tell yourself, I'm not capable of this, my karma is heavy, my afflictions are deep, there's no way I can do it. But when it comes to food, you think, I can eat 3, 4, 5, 7 bowls, no problem at all. At the moment of eating, your eyes are wide open. But when it comes to practice or memorizing text, you think, I'm already 30 or 40 years old, I can't do it. So when it comes to practice and virtue, you should strengthen your mind. As for creating negative karma or eating or other meaningless things, I think it's fine to be less diligent or not so enthusiastic. But it's the opposite for ordinary people. When it comes to unwholesome or meaningless things, they are very diligent and happy. But when it comes to listening to teachings, some people, when doing negative things, they are full of energy. But when it comes to listening to Mahayana teachings, they just doze off, have no energy, and look half dead. It really feels like this. I see some people just can't stay awake, but as soon as the class is over, they come back to life. This happens, and it's not good. When it comes to virtue, we should always tell ourselves, come on, I can't be like this, I must work hard. The great masters of the past, like Milarepa, look, he killed so many people, created so much negative karma, but in one lifetime, he attained Buddhahood. Milarepa himself said, I am not Buddha Vajradhara, nor am I a great bodhisattva who came to this world. I am just an ordinary person, bound by all kinds of fetters. But whoever has faith in the Dharma, like I do, they can all attain Buddhahood in this very life. So, Milarepa set the best example for us Buddhists. Everyone possesses the Buddha nature, and everyone has the opportunity to achieve realization. So, in a short time, don't keep making excuses for ourselves. That's not reasonable. For those living in cities, they have many unreasonable excuses like, I'm too busy, I have too much work, too many things to do. Don't make excuses for your Dharma studies. Everyone should study diligently and sincerely. It's not that difficult for you, so I sincerely hope you will not give up diligence. In this life, we should make this aspiration. Ideally, I will attain realization in this very life. If not, at least I will not fall into the 3 lower realms, and I will never abandon bodhicitta in my mind stream. Recently, many people have made this vow. I am very happy about this. Many are saying, no matter what, I vow never to abandon bodhicitta in this life and in all future lives. I know that in studying the Dharma, bodhicitta holds the most important place. Without bodhicitta, nothing can succeed. With this resolve, I think you have found direction and assurance for your practice in this life. So everyone, please stay diligent and never give up. All right, we'll stop here for today.
Tupun Tsunin Chua Chua
Bandar Gara Badna Sodargye Bandar Gara Badna Sodargye Bandar Gara Badna Sodargye